York City and across the country. This is ABC News Election Night 2018. Now reporting, George Stephanopoulos.
And we are here at ABC News headquarters in New York, 1 a.m. in the East. What you're looking at right there are the results in the Senate so far. Republicans have picked up 3 seats in the Senate. Several seats still outstanding. In the House, Democrats projected to win between 32 and 36 seats in the House of Representatives. That's enough to take control. 24 are in so far, but we're waiting on several contested races in the state of California. Chief National Correspondent Tom Yamas is here. I want to go back up to the board and show us what we're looking at.
Hey, George, how are you? All right, let's take a look at California now. You know, obviously, Democrats had a lot working for them in California. It's a very blue state. But if we split up the races here, George, really, you have the Central Valley. And I highlight that because you have farmers here, you have growers here. President's immigration policies, tariffs affecting voters here. They want to know about that. And then the other big section that we're talking about as well is going to be the suburbs in and around Los Angeles all the way to San Diego. Several races we're watching there. In fact, some of these congressional districts are so tiny we can't even press them right now. But one of the closest ones we were watching was California 49. I'm going to try to see if I hit it right here, just north of San Diego. See, I missed it. It's so small. At some point, we'll get there. But there it is. Right here. California 49. Darrell Issa decided not to run. He surrendered the seat earlier tonight. This was an open seat. You can see Democrats right there. They're on top with 71% reporting. George, there were several seats here that were either open, you had Republicans retiring, or Democrats just fielded candidates they thought were stronger.
Democrats always considering that their anchor of the evening. Okay, Tom, thanks very much. Let's take a look at the Senate. So far, we have 3 switches so far. First one of the night came in Indiana, where the incumbent Democrat Joe Donnelly was defeated by Mike Braun. Then in the state of North Dakota, another incumbent Democrat, Heidi Heitkamp, defeated by Kevin Cramer, 3-term congressman in the state of North Dakota, and in the state of Missouri. We have a loss by Claire McCaskill, the Democrat, defeated by the Attorney General Josh Hawley. Those are the 3 pickups there for the Republicans so far. A big hold for them as well in the state of Texas, where Ted Cruz won. And we also want to take a look at the state of Mississippi right now, which looks like it's heading to a runoff in about a month, where you have Mike Espy, the Democrat, who's got 41% of the vote, up against the incumbent Cindy Hyde-Smith, but neither one is going to break 50. They'll have a runoff in December. That would be an uphill fight for Espy in the runoff. And we're still waiting on results in the West, the state of Arizona. We have a very close race right now between Kirsten Sinema and Martha McSally. And the state of Nevada, Jackie Rosen up against Dean Heller. And, David, you have some results of the exit polls from Nevada. We don't have any real results yet.
Yeah, and they're kind of telling you. This is the flip side of what you just showed up there with Joe Donnelly, Heidi Heitkamp, Claire McCaskill, all these Democratic senators trying to hold on in states that Trump easily won. Nevada was the one state where Hillary won by 2, Dean Heller trying to hold on to his seat. And we don't have numbers from it yet, but take a look at what the exit polls are showing us. When asked on Donald Trump approval, we know this is a referendum on the president tonight. 47% in Nevada approve of his job performance. More than half of the voters who turned out today said they disapprove. That might be encouraging for Jackie Rosen's camp. Was Donald Trump a factor in your vote today? 40% said they showed up to oppose, 33% to support him. When it comes to gun control, and obviously we were talking about this earlier with Cecilia and everybody else here, what we've seen in America in this last year, we cannot forget Las Vegas and the massacre, the largest massacre in history. 52% there support stricter gun control measures, which is something that Jackie Rosen has talked about often on the campaign trail. But she's really most often talked about protecting pre-existing conditions, saying that we do not need to repeal and replace Obamacare. Why not fix it? That has been central to her campaign ads and to her on the stump, repeatedly saying the answer is to fix this, to protect pre-existing conditions, not to throw it out.
And it's been a big issue advertised by Democrats across the country. Also, a lot of ballot initiatives on the ballot across the country. And Terry Moran, you've been keeping an eye on that. Right there, we have up there ones about Medicaid expansion in Idaho, Nebraska, and Utah.
These are direct democracy actions that are impacting hundreds of thousands of people. This is essentially doing by the voters what their governors and state legislatures wouldn't do, which is buy into Obamacare's expansion of Medicaid. And it will provide medical insurance and care for hundreds of thousands of people in those states. We mentioned already that in Florida, they decided to restore voting rights to felons who have served their time, paid their restitution, except for murderers and sex offenders. And what you see is as you always see with referenda, voters taking these matters into their own hands. And these are very, very significant issues. There are less significant issues. In Colorado, they eliminated the provision of their law that allowed for the punishment of slavery for some crimes, which would have been unconstitutional, but was lying around in the law, and they decided to erase it. So
good to clean it up.
But also, a couple of states have said that they want to have commissions to determine the drawing of district lines. This is getting straight at the question of gerrymandering. And we've talked a lot about it tonight in terms of why certain people got elected. But it keeps being a problem because the state legislature does the drawing of the lines, and they do it to benefit themselves and their parties. If it goes to a commission, that turns to have a much fairer consequence, and a couple of states have added that tonight.
Well, they did have the reforms in California as well, which created the jungle primaries. Let's talk about health care a little bit, because, it keeps coming up, David, in the exit polls. We see it as the #1 issue. I wonder now, though, what is going to be done with it. John Carl, the president, at first didn't know what he wanted to do with the Affordable Care Act. Now you've got the lawsuit barreling towards the courts that would invalidate most of the provisions. Clearly, that's where the Republican Senate is. You've got a Democratic House who wants to preserve and possibly expand it. Real gridlock, but something is going to happen.
I mean, basically what you've had Obamacare gutted for the most part. There's not much left. What's left is falling apart, and there's no consensus, and there certainly won't be with a Republican Senate and a narrow Democratic House on what to replace it with.
And Mary, you covered that on the campaign trail. You covered every day on Capitol Hill. One of the things you saw were from the successful Republican candidates, they said, no, we want to protect pre-existing conditions as well. The question is how.
Exactly. And it will be fascinating to see, because you do have so many Republicans who have walked this fine line saying over and over again, repeal Obamacare, it's got to go, and now coming out and saying, no, we are going to do something to protect these pre-existing conditions. But how, George? I mean, every single attempt that Republicans have made to come up with a plan to replace Obamacare has been unsuccessful. And there is no plan waiting in the wings here. It's not as if they've been running on this issue and there is something ready to go. It's why so many voters that I've talked to around the country are concerned that if Republicans do move forward, continue to gut Obamacare, that the rug may effectively be pulled out from
under them. They're going to have to act, though. And Tara Moran, you cover the Supreme Court for us as well. Famously, it was John Roberts, the Chief Justice, who upheld Obamacare while President Obama was in. This is going to be right back, almost certainly, in the lap of the Supreme Court. What does he do the next time?
Well, he's got a different court, for one thing. He's got Neil Gorsuch, and Justice Kennedy, who was a key vote, is also gone. And that was a neat judicial trick that he managed to pull off, which is turn the penalty into a tax if we're not getting insurance, and therefore finding it within Congress's power. This time around, he's going to be confronted with a challenge to his institution. One of the things John Roberts wants to do is not put the Supreme Court in all of these battles. He's trying to, especially after the Kavanaugh hearing, protect that institutional trust that people still have in it. And this case, when it comes to him, is going to be a real challenge.
It certainly will. It's likely to happen relatively soon. Another result in the state of South Dakota. State of South Dakota, Congresswoman Kristi Noem has defeated the Democrat Billy Sutton. That's a hold for the Republicans. We're seeing again, Matthew Dowd, that checkerboard of governor seats across the Midwest.
Yeah, one of the fascinating things is that we may end tonight with the Democrats holding 53% of the seats in the House, the Republicans holding 53% of the seats in the Senate, and the governors representing each party, representing each 50% of the country when this whole day is over. If you talk about an incredible split decision that we're having in the country today.
Can get?
Yeah.
Chris Christie shaking his head.
No, listen, I think the way it looks right now, I mean, a Republican is winning Connecticut right now by 3 points. Republican will probably pick up the Alaska seat when we get to that later. You may wind up, after them having to defend 26 seats, only losing net 3 or 4 seats and still have 29 or 30 Republican governors out of 50. As we've been talking about all night, that's the playing field.
It's a net 5 down now. It's a net 5 right now down.
Right. But they're up in Connecticut and they're going to pick up Alaska.
They're still awaiting the cities and towns in Connecticut.
So what I'm saying is that you could wind up in a situation where Republicans still hold 29 or 30 of the governorships. That's close to 3/5 now of the governorships in the country. That's really important for all the stuff we've been talking about, redistricting, and how policy will be set at the state level in reaction to whatever happens to Obamacare.
A lot of votes left to count. But let everyone take a look up at the list we have here right now. The women governors elected tonight. You see 8 women governors elected. We've already talked about the number of women already elected in the House, a record number of women elected in the House as well. It raises the question, Koch, and I know you've thought a lot about this. Is government different when women are running it?
Yes. Yeah.
You can do 100 words or less.
The fact is, we know from legislative bodies, and we saw this in state legislatures over the years, and finally we've gotten enough women in the national legislature so that you can measure it, that women are less ideological. This is broad strokes, but less ideological, less partisan, more willing to get things done than men in those legislative bodies. That's not true of every woman, certainly, but it is true by and large. And it's particularly true when it comes to issues affecting women, children, and families. The other thing that we've seen recently that is new data is that working moms in legislative bodies pay a lot more attention to issues that affect working moms. And of course, that's an awful lot of women in this country.
And it's all going to be put to the test right now because we have so many changes. We're still waiting on the results coming out of Georgia, where Stacey Abrams is trying to become the first African-American woman governor in the history of the United States. Brian Kemp is the Georgia Secretary of State. He's still leading right there. For now, still above 50%. That is one of those states where if neither candidate gets above 50%, there will be a runoff. I want to go back to Steve Osunsami in Atlanta. Not all the vote is in yet. The Abrams team still think they're in this?
Well, you know, we're listening to the campaign manager speak right now. She is sort of laying out the land. They are now counting on outstanding votes in Fulton County, which is the largest county in the state of Georgia, and votes to the south of the county, which they expect to be heavily Democratic, and some votes that are sprinkled around a few precincts. But about 30% of the largest county in the state of Georgia is still outstanding. We just heard her talk about 20,000 absentee ballots that still have to be counted in Gwinnett County alone, which is a county north of us. So we're expecting Stacey Abrams to take the stage here in a short while, but we do not expect a concession speech at all. They're talking about absentee ballots. They're talking about provisional ballots. Right now, I think the last number I saw had Brian Kemp, Secretary of State, within about 35,000 votes of the runoff. So once that deficit is met, we run into a runoff. They're sounding like Abrams could still win this. That's the sound that you're hearing right now. We have a full packed crowd here. They are still hopeful, and we're told that at Kemp's campaign headquarters, they're hopeful as well.
Tom, do you have you can go to the board. Let's pull out what we have of the vote coming in right now and what is still outstanding and how it might flesh out.
So George, here's the thing. So Steve is listening to the campaign. He's hearing what they have to say. From what we're seeing on the data on our end, we have 99% of the vote in so far. There's about, I think it was 115,000 difference with Kemp on top. When we look at what Stacey Abrams did, she did what she had to do. She won in Atlanta. Of course, we knew that, but she won in a lot of the counties outside of Atlanta. She outperformed Hillary Clinton there as well. When we go to one of the bellwether, one of the swing counties we were going to watch, Cobb County, she won there, 53%. We stay on Stacey Abrams. She knew she had to turn out the African-American vote in some rural counties as well, right around here. And they did that, George. When we go into a small county like Randolph, right here, she won that. That's what she wanted to do. But when we look at one of the bellwether counties, it's a very, very small county in Georgia. It's called Screven, Georgia. They always pick the winner. Kemp is up, or they usually pick the winner, I should say. Kemp is up 60.3%. The numbers right now don't look great for Abrams. When we come out, though, I got to jump out here and we'll come back in to see where we are in the state. He's at 51 to 48. Remember, we have to break that 50% threshold. We're not calling this yet because it's just too close.
And, of course, if there's a recount, he's, as Secretary of State, would actually have influence over the recount.
Yep. He's the one who sets the rules. He's both the player and the referee.
Pierre, Tommy, there have already been lawsuits against that possibility.
Exactly. If the vote is close, there has been a lawsuit filed that would ask him to be recused from making the final decision on this, that, he is a referee playing in his own game.
What else are we seeing in the exit polls there?
A couple of really telling things. I'm going to go right into whether or not you believe more women should be elected, what the voters in Georgia said. Look at this. 45% say it's very important that more women be elected. 27% also said it was somewhat important. You break it down by approval. We've been talking about the referendum and the president all night long. More than half of the voters in Georgia approve of what they're seeing from Donald Trump, and we know she's a very progressive candidate. She disagrees on Donald Trump on just about every issue. Was Donald Trump a factor in your vote? 21% said they support him. Just 14% they said they showed up to show their opposition to Donald Trump. You break it down by the issues in Georgia, much more evenly divided than what we've seen in many of the other states. 33% said health care. That was a major issue for her. 33% immigration. Obviously, President Trump's argument in the final weeks, immigration in this country. You break it down one last, I'll show you, pre-existing conditions. 52%. That's the one area in all of these issues where Georgia voters said the Democratic Party definitely has the edge, and that was something she pushed very hard in these final weeks.
Byron Pitts, this race got ugly.
Oh, George, extremely so. I mean, race was in the room at every debate, every conversation. We talked about this earlier today about the two Georgias, right? There's Atlanta, where she's doing very well, and there's the rest of Georgia. You look at a place like Forsyth County, which is about 40 miles north of Atlanta. This is a town, you remember back in 1987, there was this terrible clash with the Klan there. Well, now Forsyth County is 20% minority. But even still, she did very poorly there. So it's an indication that while certainly she's doing well in the urban parts of Georgia, the Old South is still strong in Georgia.
Alex.
You know, one thing I think comes out of tonight is the Democrats are in a quandary. How do they run in 2020 moving forward? You look at Gillum in Florida, ran as a progressive, Beto O'Rourke. If Abrams in Georgia doesn't make it, is that the path? Well, the alternative is what? Donnelly, who ran as a moderate conservative. McCaskill, who said, I agree with Trump on the border. You see that path almost closed to Democrats. I don't know that tonight resolves what the Democratic Party, which road they take moving forward.
Alex, this is a party that has found itself in the wilderness, unable to even have a path to victory in so-called blue states. I mean, that's why tonight winning back in Michigan, winning in Illinois was very important for Democrats. Stacey had an uphill battle. This race is still very close. Obama lost it by 200,000. Hillary lost it by 200,000. She had the right formula, which was to expand the electorate, to try to build a Democratic coalition outside of the Atlanta suburbs. And right now, she's still waiting. Well, it's not working as we speak. But there are still outstanding ballots to be counted, and that's why she hasn't conceded.